unlock the door downstairs. Okay. Hello again. All of your inquisitive minds and beings of a high intelligence. Welcome once again to another episode of Rapology. One with wisdom, knowledge, and overstanding rules. Today, we're here with a phenomenal guest, one who's a legend in her own right. You know what? Before we go any further, I want to give this young lady a round of applause. How about that? Yes. So today we've been blessed to have our guest with us through the tornado, through the bad weather, through the storm, and through just the trials and tribulations of life. But you know, at the end of the day, God is good, God is faithful, and she's here, Miss Karen Luke, writer, researcher, producer, graduate of high distinction in cinema studies, English literature from the University of Toronto. She's completed internship with talent agencies William Morris in Denver, and experience as a senior clerk to the executive vice president, English services at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. She served as an analyst, script analyst. Her clients range from clients in the United States, Canada, Europe, Asia, South America, the Middle East. She currently sits on the board of members of families in the film industry in Canada. She's working with the film, television, and media industries to improve work-life and balancing here in Houston and members abroad. And she's here at the Rapology show to bless us with her presence. So we're going to get the show started because if we keep on with her bio, we might run out of time. But we're grateful. We're blessed to have her here. So I'd like to just say thank you. Welcome, Karen. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, it's good to have you here. Before we go any further, I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsors, to our supporters, to our co-host, Mr. John Bell, our baritone, very white voice brother, who might join us later. Hopefully the weather will allow him to make it here safely. We'd like to give a shout out to Ms. Tanisha Knox, Barbara Walker, Bobby Freeman, One Team One Fight Ministries, Kingdom Life Central, Brother Kingdom, You Matter, Solid Solutions, and all of our other many sponsors and supporters. But right now we're gonna just dig into this interview right here. So Karen, talk to us. How do you do all this?
That's a question to ask myself. My story, it was kind of really weird how I opened the door to get my foot into this crazy business. So when I got out of school, it was at the time of SARS. So I'm from Canada. I was born and raised in Toronto. And SARS had just come out, so a lot of production and film industry kind of shut down because Toronto was one of the outbreak cities. So I was like, just fresh out of school, like, come on, I need to pay my student loan back. So my cousin at the time was working for an insurance company. She got me a job at, working as a file clerk, and I was kind of like, it was an office job. It was on what is the Canadian equivalent of Wall Street, so it's called Bay Street. So I was going in, clocking in, filing files, and then to kick it off, to make it more interesting, one of the requirements of the job is I had to take these insurance industry courses. So I was like, serious? Okay, all right, let's do this. So my first day of going to class, and this is on your own time, this is non-company time, we had to do like a networking exercise. So the first person, and they were like, turn to the person on your right, and talk to them and ask them what company to work with. Because all of us are there because it's a requirement for a job. And this person was telling me about the company to work with. I never heard of them. And then she's like, oh, we do fun and entertainment insurance. And I was like, wait, what? Like, oh, that's interesting. So that night I went home and I was Googling, like film and entertainment insurance companies, anybody that's involved in that world, because I was like, I might as well marry my training and education and
Yes.
what I love to do with where I'm currently situated. And I'm just cold queried them, like, hi, I'm like Karen, and I just graduated in film studies, and would love to talk to you about working with you. And one of the companies that actually got back to me was an insurance brokerage, and they were like, the film industry, we can train you to be an insurance broker. And so that opened what I'd like to say, the back door to the industry. And what's really funny, I was there for a few years, and then my next move was then working at Real World Film Festival, which is run by Tanya Lee Williams, if you remember her from Young and the Restless.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Olivia Bridges. So I became her executive assistant there. But what was interesting was my experience of working with the financial world in an entertainment context. And then that experience, the insurance experience plus working for Real World Film Festival then opened the door for me to getting the job at Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and also scored me an internship during the Toronto International Film Festival with William Morrison Never. So, and then on top of that, opened the door for me to working as a script analyst with the Film Buyer. And again, it was like, oh, you have finance industry experience.
Yes.
You understand the money. So here I am.
Right. And for y'all who just don't really know the importance and the weight she carries, she actually helped finance and oversee the financial production part of Godfather 3 for some of you old.
Oh, no, not me.
Oh, not
I worked with someone
okay.
who was a producer. So when I was at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, Fred Fuchs, who used to be president of Zoetrope, which is Francis Ford Coppola's company, he had moved from LA. His wife is from Canada, so he decided to move and raise his family in Toronto. And they had hired him just before I started working there to run the drama department. Mm-hmm. And that was the era of the show Heartland and Little Mosque on the Prairie, and there was a South African Canadian medical show called Josie H. And so there's a lot of great things, and I'd like to say, the beginnings of shows like Schitt's Creek that would become the juggernaut that it was.
Yes.
But yeah, he oversaw lots of great and exciting projects, and especially with his experience, I got a chance to ask him for advice and see him every day and pick his brain. So what a talented man.
Wow, that is great. That is awesome. So, tell our audience how you ended up here today. I mean, what are you doing now?
Right now,
all your experience.
Well, I work. I wear many different hats. Is probably the best way to describe it. And sometimes if I'm working in the capacity of a development producer, the best way to explain it is I shuttle between like the creative side and the money side and try to find that sweet spot where everyone's happy. And it's not always easy to negotiate and broker that kind of piece. But I also, so sometimes I'm working with writers to help elevate their projects for the market, and sometimes I'm working with the producers to oversee a rewrite or development of a project. And then the irony was, when I wanted to enter this industry, I wanted to be a writer.
Oh, wow.
And a long time I'm like, and everyone's like, you need to write your own things.
Right.
So right now, so there's a couple of projects I am currently involved in, but one I can talk about is actually I'm starting to learn about and get to know the podcast space.
Oh.
Because I was like, what's that? And so I'm developing a podcast with one of my partners, Mamie Jones, a podcast called The Monument Diaries, which is a place for people to bond with, share, and validate their personal experiences and with honesty, and a chance for us to learn from one another, a chance for us to be inspired. Every episode will feature a hero who's going to share their personal journey and a tale of perseverance, determination, and grit. Inspiration, something that we all need to hear, because and our big thing when we first decided to embark on this venture was at first we were playing with the title "Don't Should on Me" because in our society, we hear a lot of voices that you should do this, you should eat this, you should, and we wanted to focus less on telling people what to do because I'll be honest, I don't know. I don't have the answers, but let's focus on building a safe, collaborative community where we can learn from one another, we can share from each other's wisdom. Because our personal conviction is everybody's got a story to tell, and everybody has something we can all learn from, and some quality we can imitate. And ultimately, can you imagine a world where we had that kind of collective spirit and just value one another like that? So it's just a project, a personal project that I'm really excited about, where people, it's a safe space to heal or whatever it is that you're going through, and you feel, your time here on Earth, however long, however short it is, matters and means something.
Right. So when is that project planned?
Oh, we still haven't announced a launch date, but hopefully soon, coming soon is all I can say.
Right. Because we're in a society, in a world where people need that, need to hear everybody's story, so people won't feel like that they're alone going through whatever it is.
Right.
So everybody, we need that.
Yes, and just be ready. I may tap you guys.
We'd love to tell our
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said tap us, because we may tap you to look at the script we produced out here at HMS. Yes.
So can you go? What is a script analyst like? What does?
Yes. So funny story. When I first started working in that capacity, working with a film buyer, and I gotta admit, when I first came out of school, I was full of a lot of ideals and kind of like, being really artsy. Right. And then I remember my boss going, "We're not interested in awards. We're interested in butts and seats." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well then." And then I had to learn quickly, the film industry is a bit like a factory. And I'm talking on the indie, and this is the independent side. This is not, we weren't working in a studio. So, and the funny, interesting thing about the independent world, it is mainstream, but it's all about how it's financed. So studio is like, you have an in-house, studio like a Disney or a Sony or whatever. Independent is everybody else. So if you don't remember the film Room, the one where Brie Larson won her Oscar, that was a Canadian-Irish independent film. Okay. It looks and smells like a Hollywood production. It is not. It is an independent film. So when a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm going to go in the industry, I'm going to do indies, I'm not doing studio stuff," and I say this as someone who had to go through that journey to learn and understand what does that all mean. I'm like, you're now competing with the Europeans, you were competing with the Asians, you were competing with Nollywood, you were competing, which have very robust and competitive industries. And so in some ways, sometimes the studio side is a little safer because that tends to be more American-centric. And then indie is everything else. And so, and you see actually a lot of Oscar winners come from the indie world.
Wow. So let me ask you this question, Karen. So if there is a project, okay, or say you have a project, and you try to pitch it to the studio, okay, and they say, well, this might be a good project, but this is something that we're not interested in, does that automatically fall into indie? Is that like the next thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, here's what, in my experience of working as a script analyst, the indie folks and the studio folks all talk to each other.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, like, hey, if you actually got the money together and filmed something, hats off and kudos, because that's incredibly hard to do just alone.
Yeah.
It's hard to get money and crew and a team to do it because I don't have a number, but it's a high number of projects that never get out the gate. Like when I was working as a script analyst, there was one, I can't say too much about it, But there was one script that came my way, it came in my inbox, and I was like, it had a very, very, very famous writer attached. Like, you've seen this writer's work.
Yeah.
You know this writer's work is well into Hollywood, like, like best films of all time.
Yeah.
This person has more than one in that list. A lot of times when I was working for the script analyst, so what he did was he represented like what they call gap financing. So it's like these companies have raised some money and they're looking to pre-sell international territories. So what they do is like the world is kind of carved up, like the U.S. and Canada is one territory, Italy is another, Germany is another, South America is another, Middle East, China, Japan, and they all represent like a piece of a pie. And so a lot of independent producers and even studio system. I mean, I can't speak too much because I don't have too much understanding how studios work, but from my understanding, it's not that different. We're all chasing the same money.
Yeah.
We're all chasing the same screens and the same theaters. And so they're trying to pre-sell as many to raise as much money as possible. And so, so the guy I was working with represented, distribution companies in a few different countries. So they were, like, that's how they sell out there. I mean, if you raise $100,000 here, $500,000 here, $1 million here, and it starts to turn into possibly a agreement project. Yeah, money.
Yeah.
You can hire a crew. You can pay your cast. Things like that. So, sorry, totally brain defunct.
So in the indie market, there, if I'm understanding correctly, so Italy has a market, and so all these different countries, Germany has their own market, and so you can pitch your project to whichever one of those markets, or all of them if you want.
Yeah, like what you're trying to do is you're trying to sell windows of how to exploit your intellectual property. So, like, an example, like I remember when the show Bridgerton came out.
Yes.
Yeah. And, but what really caught my attention was it was the number one show in Nigeria. And I went, hold up, Nigeria. Now, Nigeria's Nollywood that's serious. They don't need to import American content. They produce their own shows, their own stories. Yeah. They have their own star system, and they also sell to other countries.
Yes.
Like even here you can see on Netflix, like has Nollywood content. So when it was number one in Nigeria, I need to take a closer look at this. That's when you knew you had a juggernaut, because if they're buying an American show, it must be really superior content. So, to answer your question, what you're trying to do is you're trying to pre-sell in advance, and that's usually, like, for example, a lot of people go to the Cannes Film Festival,
yes.
The Marché du Film, where buyers from around the planet come. Now, if you're doing TV, MIPCOM is and it's also at Cannes. Oh, and I don't know if they've moved it recently. I think they moved it recently. It was like last year. So they're kind of, there's a big shift in the industry, but you're trying to get as many cards on the dance floor. Like, and usually the hardest one is getting the first one to sign on and say, I'm going to trust you with money.
Yeah.
And, the way I like to explain it is like, imagine if someone comes to you and says, I've got a project, not yours, mine, and I want you to take your retirement savings and invest in it. And I'm going to promise you a return on investment.
Okay.
Your retirement money.
Yeah.
How likely are you going to sit and cut a check million?
Right.
And that's what you're up against when you are pitching, whether it's a studio or an independent financier, because they are representing people with money that they want to make nuts to return. They want to profit back.
Right.
And sometimes it's a pension fund, sometimes it's a retirement fund, and it's some kind of investment. So when I began working as a script analyst, I had to learn my job was less creative and more akin to being a stockbroker. Like you're betting. This is like a betting house, and to say like, you know, what are the check marks that a project will have that makes a financier feel more comfortable with taking out their, you know, saying, okay, yes, it's hard. So back to that uber famous screenwriter, they had A-list actors already attached. So this is packaged with a major talent agency. That writer, there's no way this writer is working without a big, powerful agent. So even though we operate in the independent world, for whatever reason, they were like, okay, let's tap that kind of structure of financing. And I remember like when my boss he sent me that email with that script, as soon as I saw the name of the writer, I was like, this is gonna be a green light. I just have to write my thing. I'm gonna write high recommend at the bottom of my report. This is a slam dunk. And I saw the list of, you know, all the actors that have already said yes. These are very famous A-list actors. I'm like, okay, their agents are vetting it. Okay, you know, like this is just a formality. And then I started reading the script, and everything in my training went, I don't know who's gonna watch this.
Wow.
You know, like, and that movie, I was trying to find arguments to support, because like when I write a script analyst report, it's not unlike you know, investment market report.
Yeah.
And I have to argue and plead the case of why this is a, you know, a project that's totally valuable. And it was also based on a book, a famous book. So I was like, okay, it's based on existing IP, but when I research and compare to other projects that kind of tackle some of the similar issues, they were all flops. So it's a bit of a temperature read. Does the market actually want this? People, you know, and the thing I've had to learn is time is the most valuable asset anyone can have.
Right.
Because with money, you may lose money, but you can make it back, but with time, you cannot get that back.
Right.
So you are fighting with people like, hey, I want you to give me 2 hours of your life. And I know I'm competing with, I don't know if you follow sports. I don't know if you are a hobbyist. I don't know if you want to sleep. I don't know if you want to spend time with your family. But what any content creator is really asking every audience member is, give me a slice of your life that you're never going to give back. And that is a tough thing to ask people to trust this. So I remember like falling into that going, oh my gosh, I'm such a fan, and even I'm not sure if I'd be willing to spend 180 minutes with this universe that's been presented to me. And I remembered like I lost sleep over it, and in fact and my boss was like, so what's the decision? And I was like, I just say pass. And then I was like, am I gonna get demoted? Am I gonna pass on a big blockbuster? Am I gonna get fired? And I remember it's a project that I keep checking up on even years later, because sometimes, you know, and it could take years for a project to get off the ground, because you gotta get all the people on the dance floor. I keep checking them, did I make the right call? Did I make the right call? And to this day, it still hasn't been made. You know, so sometimes when you hear stories of like, oh, so-and-so actor is attached, and then, you know, years pass and that project never happens, and then suddenly they re-announce it again. Oh, now it's starting so-and-so. It's usually because for whatever reason the financing isn't coming together. And like I said, we're talking incredibly seasoned, established people have a hard time getting off the ground. And it's really funny because